Bear by Marian Engel, published in 1976, stands as perhaps the most controversial, darkest, and forbidden book in Canadian literature. The story follows Lou, a lonely librarian who develops a sexual relationship with a bear while cataloging a private library on a remote island. This darkest and forbidden book explores themes of isolation, sexual frustration, and the complete breakdown of human boundaries through explicit scenes between Lou and the bear. Engel presents the relationship as both liberation and psychological collapse, with Lou finding fulfillment through acts that violate fundamental human taboos. The book was placed on Germany's Index of Forbidden Media, effectively banning its distribution due to its explicit depiction of bestiality. Despite winning Canada's Governor General's Literary Award, this darkest and forbidden book remains highly controversial for its graphic portrayal of human-animal sexual contact and its suggestion that such relationships might represent authentic connection. I Love My Mom by Jiu Dan, published in China before being banned there, tells the story of a paralyzed son and his devoted mother whose caregiving relationship crosses into incestuous territory. This darkest and forbidden book presents a scenario where maternal love becomes twisted into sexual dependency through years of isolation and physical intimacy. The mother, who has sacrificed everything for her disabled son, gradually transgresses normal boundaries as his physical needs mature into adult desires. The book was banned in mainland China for its explicit depiction of incest and its disturbing portrayal of how caregiving can become exploitative. This darkest and forbidden book challenges readers with its suggestion that love and abuse can become indistinguishable when people are completely isolated from society and normal human relationships. The Black Farm by Elias Witherow, published in 2017, depicts a nightmarish afterlife where suicide victims are condemned to eternal torture and repeated death. This darkest and forbidden book follows Nick and Jess, a couple who take their own lives, only to awaken in a realm of endless suffering, ruled by a monstrous entity called the Pig. The book features graphic descriptions of torture, sexual violence, and psychological torment as punishment for suicide. While not formally banned by any country, this darkest and forbidden book has faced content restrictions on multiple ebook platforms due to its extreme depictions of violence and its potentially harmful portrayal of suicide consequences. The book's horror lies in its suggestion that suicide leads not to peace, but to eternal, inescapable agony. Happy Ever After by Matt Shaw, published in 2013, presents one of the most psychologically disturbing scenarios in modern horror through the story of Peter, a delusional man who kidnaps Vanessa, believing he can force her to love him. This darkest and forbidden book alternates between Peter's twisted perspective, where he sees his actions as romantic gestures, and Vanessa's desperate attempts to survive through manipulation and false compliance. Shaw depicts graphic scenes of sexual violence, psychological torture, and captivity, while exploring how obsession can be mistaken for love. The book shows Peter's complete detachment from reality as he narrates acts of control and abuse as if they were courtship rituals. While not formally banned, this darkest and forbidden book has faced content restrictions on several platforms due to its explicit depiction of kidnapping, sexual assault, and Stockholm Syndrome dynamics. The horror lies in Shaw's unflinching portrayal of how predators rationalize their actions and how victims must psychologically adapt to survive. Offseason by Ketchum, published in 1980, depicts a family of feral cannibals who systematically hunt and consume a group of vacationers in coastal Maine. This darkest and forbidden book follows Carla and her friends as they become prey for an inbred clan that views humans as nothing more than food sources. Ketchum presents graphic scenes of torture, dismemberment, and cannibalism with clinical detail, showing how the family operates as efficient predators who waste no part of their human victims. The book includes disturbing scenes involving children both as victims and perpetrators of violence, creating a world where civilized behavior has completely collapsed. Several countries have restricted this darkest and forbidden book due to its extreme violence and graphic depictions of cannibalism, with some retailers refusing to stock it alongside other extreme horror titles. The book's horror emerges from its suggestion that humanity's veneer of civilization is incredibly thin, and that savage behavior lurks just beneath the surface. The Wasp Factory, by Iain Banks, published in 1984, follows 16-year-old Frank Cawduhame, a disturbed teenager who has murdered 3 children and lives in complete isolation with his secretive father on a Scottish island. This darkest and forbidden book presents Frank's ritualistic behavior, including his creation of elaborate torture devices for insects and his belief that killing wasps can predict future events. Banks reveals Frank's murders gradually, showing how he killed his younger brother, cousin, and a local child through increasingly creative methods involving explosives and traps. The book explores themes of gender identity, psychological abuse, and the construction of violent masculinity through Frank's twisted worldview. While not formally banned, this darkest and forbidden book has faced challenges in several school districts due to its graphic violence against children and animals, disturbing sexual content, and psychological themes. The horror lies in Banks's clinical presentation of child murder and his exploration of how isolation and abuse can create monsters. The Girls, by Emma Cline, published in 2016, explores how a lonely 14-year-old girl named Evie becomes involved with a Manson family-inspired cult that commits brutal murders. This darkest and forbidden book presents the gradual seduction of a vulnerable teenager who joins the group not for ideological reasons, but for acceptance and attention from the charismatic leader, Russell. Cline depicts how Evie witnesses and becomes complicit in acts of violence, sexual abuse, and psychological manipulation, while remaining focused on her infatuation with one of the older girls. The book includes disturbing scenes of group sexual activity involving minors, ritualistic violence, and the systematic grooming of young women for exploitation. While not formally banned, this darkest and forbidden book has faced challenges in several school libraries due to its explicit sexual content involving teenagers and its graphic depiction of cult violence. The horror emerges from Cline's realistic portrayal of how ordinary adolescent desires for belonging can lead to participation in monstrous acts. Requiem for a Dream, by Hubert Selby Jr., published in 1974, follows 4 characters whose pursuit of their dreams leads to devastating drug addiction and complete psychological collapse. This darkest and forbidden book depicts Sarah's descent into amphetamine psychosis as she desperately tries to lose weight for a television appearance that will never come, while her son Harry and his girlfriend Marian spiral into heroin addiction and prostitution. Selby presents graphic scenes of physical deterioration, sexual degradation, and medical horror, including Harry's gangrenous arm infection and Marian's forced participation in sexual performances for drugs. The book culminates with each character reaching their lowest possible point, including electroshock therapy, amputation, and complete psychological breakdown. This darkest and forbidden book has been challenged in multiple school districts for its graphic drug use, explicit sexual content, and disturbing medical procedures. The horror lies in Selby's unflinching portrayal of how addiction destroys not just individuals, but their capacity for hope itself. Tampa, by Alissa Nutting, published in 2013, follows Celeste Price, a sexually predatory 8th-grade teacher who systematically grooms and abuses her male students while maintaining her position through manipulation and careful planning. This darkest and forbidden book presents Celeste's calculated pursuit of underage boys, her elaborate schemes to avoid detection, and her complete lack of remorse for the psychological damage she inflicts. Nutting depicts explicit scenes of teacher-student sexual abuse, while exploring how female predators operate differently from their male counterparts, using societal assumptions about women to avoid suspicion. The book shows Celeste's marriage as a convenient cover for her crimes, and her willingness to destroy anyone who threatens to expose her behavior. Several school districts have banned this darkest and forbidden book due to its graphic depiction of child sexual abuse and its controversial portrayal of female predation. The horror emerges from Nutting's clinical examination of how predators exploit power dynamics and societal blind spots to continue their abuse. Hogg, by Samuel R. Delany, written in 1973 but not published until 1995, follows an 11-year-old boy who becomes involved with Hogg, a violent criminal who commits rape, murder, and other brutal acts while the child serves as his unwilling accomplice and witness. This darkest and forbidden book depicts graphic scenes of sexual violence against children, gang rape, torture, and murder, presented through the perspective of a child narrator who doesn't fully understand the horrors he's experiencing. Delany's work explores themes of power, violence, and sexual exploitation, while featuring some of the most disturbing content ever published in American literature. The book remained unpublished for over 20 years due to its extreme content, with multiple publishers refusing to release it despite Delany's reputation as an acclaimed science fiction writer. This darkest and forbidden book has faced widespread censorship and continues to be restricted by many retailers and libraries due to its graphic depiction of child sexual abuse and extreme violence. The horror emerges from Delany's unflinching portrayal of how children can be systematically exploited and traumatized by adults who view them as disposable objects. The End of Alice, by A.M. Holmes, published in 1996, presents the correspondence between an imprisoned pedophile serving time for murdering a young girl and a teenage girl who seeks his advice about seducing a younger boy. This darkest and forbidden book alternates between the narrator's memories of his crimes, including the rape and murder of 12-year-old Alice, and his encouragement of the teenage correspondent's predatory plans. Holmes depicts graphic scenes of child sexual abuse, torture, and murder, while exploring how predators rationalize their actions and seek to create new victims. The book includes disturbing descriptions of the narrator's manipulation tactics and his detailed fantasies about children, presented through his own twisted perspective as he attempts to justify his crimes. Multiple school districts and libraries have banned this darkest and forbidden book due to its explicit depiction of pedophilia and child murder, with many critics arguing it provides a handbook for predatory behavior. The horror lies in Holmes's clinical examination of predatory psychology and her suggestion that such individuals actively work to corrupt others and perpetuate cycles of abuse. In The Miso Soup, by Ryu Murakami, published in 1997, follows Kenji, a young Japanese man who works as a guide for foreign tourists seeking Tokyo's red light district, when he encounters Frank, an American whose behavior becomes increasingly disturbing and violent. This darkest and forbidden book depicts Frank's transformation from an eccentric tourist into a sadistic killer who commits brutal murders in front of Kenji, trapping him as an unwilling witness to escalating atrocities. Murakami presents graphic scenes of sexual violence, dismemberment, and torture while exploring themes of cultural alienation and the dark underbelly of Japan's sex industry. The book includes disturbing sequences involving the mutilation of sex workers and Frank's casual disposal of human bodies as if they were waste products. While not formally banned, this darkest and forbidden book has faced distribution restrictions in several countries due to its extreme violence against women and its graphic sexual content. The horror lies in Murakami's suggestion that violence can erupt suddenly from seemingly normal situations, and that ordinary people can become complicit in evil through circumstance and fear. If you found these disturbing literary explorations fascinating, be sure to watch our previous video, The Darkest Books with the Creepiest Endings Explained, for more literature that will challenge everything you thought you knew about human nature.